Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Cecilia, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you've joined us for our next live presentation from Valeo Pharma. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you're interested in scheduling a meeting with Valeo Pharma, please click on the Meetings tab found on the left navigation bar. You will be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Steve Saviuk, Chief Executive Officer of Valeo Pharma, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol VPHIF and on the TSX under the symbol VPH. Welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you, Celia. Welcome, everyone, this morning. Appreciate you taking the time to participate in this presentation of Valeo Pharma. So we'll go right into the presentation. We'll try to keep the presentation to about 20 minutes, and then we'll have questions afterwards, which, as Celia said, you can submit in the question box. So Valeo Pharma is a Canadian pharmaceutical company. It's an innovative company. We'll talk about listed on the TSX. Before we get into the presentation, there's the forward-looking statements, which many of you have seen before, and you can take a quick read through. And now let's get into the background on the company. So we were founded, I helped co-found the company back in 2003. We're a fully integrated pharma company where our drugs are available only in Canada. So we are a Canadian company with a Canadian licenses. So our commercial and go-to-market strategy is we in-license products from companies that typically are not in Canada and where the drugs would otherwise not be available in Canada. So we bypass the clinical R&D stage. The drugs we typically in-license or acquire have gone through this stage. They've, generally speaking, been approved in another jurisdiction, either by the FDA or the EMA, which is the European Medicines Agency. So we're a pure commercial play, but we're a full-service pharma company. And when we say full service, that means everything, of course, from on the commercial side, marketing and sales, but all the medical, all the regulatory, all the logistics, anything that a pharma company would need to do to bring a product to market in Canada. We have an industry-leading growth rate. We'll talk about that, but that's really something that we're quite proud of. We have a product portfolio of 12 products. So we currently commercialize 12 products. 6 are high-growth products. And when I say high growth, these are unique products. They're patented products that bring therapeutic benefits and features and have that growth potential, and which are supported by our 125 employees that work for Valeo, 85 of which are in sales. So they're across Canada. So they face healthcare professionals, primarily physicians, potentially some pharmacists, but we're out there every day in our specific therapeutic areas. And I will note one thing, which is quite interesting in terms of what is our potential of our current product portfolio, is that we estimate peak sales to be in excess of $200 million. Peak sales potential. We'll go on to the next slide. So where are we today in terms of sales? Well, you can see on the slides that we've grown, especially quickly over the last couple of years. When I say we've been around now for 20 years, but we sold our business to what was then Valiant in 2014-15. And then there was some reorganization of shareholders. We didn't sell the shares of our company. We sold all the products we had. So we went around, we started to in-license other products based on a review we did of what therapeutic areas that we wanted to focus on. So 2 years ago, we have an October fiscal year end, we had 13.6 million of revenue. These are all Canadian dollars, by the way. Last year, 27.7, so a doubling. This year, we're expected to go to 63, and the year after, in the $100 million range. When that 27.7 to 63 is quite a jump, but I will say that our current annualized run rate is in excess of 50 million right now. So we expect that to grow as the year goes on. So we think 63 is eminently attainable. And again, that's only with the products that we currently have in our portfolio. we, as many pharma companies are, do, and from a commercial perspective and development perspective, they typically set themselves up in specific and focus on specific therapeutic areas, and we are no different. So in that respect, respiratory allergy is one of our big areas that we focus on. We have a number of key products there. Ophthalmology, a relatively new area that we just got in with a license from Novartis in last summer. So we're in ophthalmology. We like the ophthalmology space. We think there's a lot of growth there. And then our specialty products are, generally speaking, hospital products. And we'll talk about, I will cherry pick a couple of products that I think you'd be interested to know a little bit more about, and which are going to be the big growth drivers for us. When we start looking at our fiscal years here, and we've done this nice, wonderful color chart here, so we try to split the three therapies we're in and show you where the revenue will grow or come from. And as giving some sort of history, Q3 21, we launched a blood thinner called Redesca, which is in the hospital group, doing very well. Q4, we acquired 2 asthma therapies from Novartis, which had no revenues. They were just approved, so they're really new drugs. And you'll see we'll talk specifically about Enerzair, which in our entire portfolio is probably the real nugget of in terms of the growth potential, peak growth potential. And then more recently in Q4, we were able to access a couple of ophthalmic drugs. We created an ophthalmic division, which we think has a lot of growth potential. These we'll talk about more. And we brought in a very interesting allergy drug out of the U.S. from a company called Kaleo, private company. It's called Allerject in Canada, and it's for severe allergic reactions. And that now falls into our respiratory allergy portfolio. So this slide kind of gives you an indication of which sectors the growth will come from as time goes on. So with that, one slide before we dive into the details on a couple of the drugs. This slide here shows where our projected revenues from this year will come. So as you can see on the far right side, ophthalmology at 25 million will be the biggest therapeutic area for us this year in terms of revenue. The hospital being second at 22 million, and then respiratory 16 million. If you would roll this forward a couple of years, you'd see that respiratory would probably be about 50% of our revenue. So the respiratory area, a lot of these products are growing, but respiratory is growing quicker than the other products. And I'll try to get into or explain to you why that is the case. So again, broad portfolio, innovative products, patented products that really change the way doctors can treat their patients for various ailments. So next slide, this gives you the overall view of the 3 products in respiratory. In respiratory, we have about a 60-person sales team. So we're out there, we're calling on approximately 12,000 doctors. That's a fairly wide physician base, split between specialists and general practitioners or family practice physicians. And you can see that Enerzair there is the one that has the greatest peak sales potential. All of them have growth. Enerzair is clearly the diamond, as we call it. So let's talk about asthma very quickly in Canada and in the U.S. For those that are from the U.S., the markets are very similar. Obviously, bigger in the U.S., but the dynamics are quite the same. Canada, big markets, somewhere is about $650 to $700 million for asthma therapies. One thing on the left box that you might see is percentage of asthma sufferers with uncontrolled symptoms. This is the unmet need in asthma. Approximately half of asthma sufferers do not feel that their symptoms are under control. And for asthmatics, there's no cure for asthma. It's a symptom control, chronic symptom control, allowing someone to be able to function, breathe better, not have any asthma, whether it's coughing, tightness of the chest, or other asthma symptoms, and keeping those in check. So this is the market that we're after, dominated by 3 or 4 very large drugs. Now, why do we think we can compete with these drugs, and what do we bring to the table? Well, we bring Enerzair to the table, which is the top left corner on this slide here, and it's the first triple agent therapy. And by that, we mean it's really 3 drugs in one. It's an inhaled therapy, first of its kind. And why we're so excited about it and we believe in its growth potential is on this next slide here, where it was compared to current standard of care. So again, these trials were conducted by Novartis. around the world, over 7,500 patients, and they compared it against Advair, the drug against Advair, which is a drug that currently sells approximately $150 million in Canada, and is really one of the standard of cares for asthma symptom relief. And you can see here, without going through all the numbers here, significant improvement over Advair. So we think we have a better inhaled therapy, a better inhaled drug, which controls symptoms better. That's when I say better, better symptom control. And this was across the mark. This is a very small summary of the various data points, but overall, not just a statistically better benefits to patients, but clinically better, something you will actually feel if you're suffering from asthma. And again, we're going after moderate to severe asthmatics, not those who suffer from time to time or what have you. These are people that wake up every day, take their medication, and need to take their medication. Now, the chart here, as much as this is we believe in the two drugs, and Atectura is the sister drug. I didn't speak very much about it, but essentially Atectura is a more conventional therapy. It does very well. It did very well against Advair head to head, but Enerzair is a true breakthrough in terms of improving asthma therapy. So having said that, how are we doing in the marketplace? We have all these people. We had last year was our really first year of launch. COVID was impacted the year, and when I say impacted, physicians were. It was hard to see physicians, and physicians for part of the year did not see as many patients. But you can see on the left-hand side the number of prescribers, number of doctors that have written at least one prescription is growing on a monthly basis. And on the right-hand side, you're seeing the number of prescriptions are growing on a monthly basis. So we are, in fact, penetrating the market. We are having a lot of success. Success takes time in launching any new drug. There's nothing that happens overnight, but these are the types of gains on a monthly basis that are very encouraging, and that really support our view that this will become one of the premier asthma therapies in Canada. So this is, again, Enerzair at peak sales will represent probably 40% of our revenues. So this is a big drug for us, and it's a patented drug, and it's been launched by Novartis in over 30 countries around the world. In a select number of countries, approximately 4 or 5, they've actually partnered it out, and in Canada, they partnered it out with ourselves. Now, to complement the asthma therapies, we do have this very interesting competitor to EpiPen. So for those with severe allergic reactions, you have this device here, which is really a state of the art, the most reliable injector on the marketplace. The EpiPen is a 40-year-old plus product. This is new. It's electronic. It senses things. It speaks to you. It's very easy to use. If you're needle phobic, you never see the needle. It's quite an advancement in the ability to inject yourself, self-inject if you need to in situations which are quite critical. So we think this product, which currently does about $4 million in revenue, will grow to about $25 million in revenue. The overall market is about $90 million now. We say it's growing 5% per year. And to give you a reference, EpiPen is about $75 million. So we think we can get pretty interesting market share here. And that's all within our respiratory allergy portfolio. Touch briefly on, we'll just slip through this on the second, and this is a very exciting new area. You're going to see a lot happening in this area with us in the coming year and years. We started off with in-licensing, again, from Novartis. We have a very strong relationship with Novartis, but we're quite independent companies. But we've I guess we've done a very good work on the asthma products, and I think that led into ophthalmology being an opportunity that they felt comfortable doing a transaction with us. These two drugs, Xiidra is available in the U.S., Simbrinza is available in the U.S. I think Xiidra does about $400+ million in revenue in the U.S., so it's a big dry eye drug. These are innovative drugs. These are not end of life. They have patent life going into the 2030s. Dry eye, underdiagnosed disease. Simbrinza is for glaucoma. We'll talk just quickly about this. So Xiidra revenues in Canada approximately $15 million. We think we can grow these. Why? Because the drug has not been promoted in about a year and a half. by Novartis. We feel that given some of our commercial team that we put together, we will be able to continue the growth that the drug was witnessing before Novartis, refocus some of its sales efforts, and we think we can grow this drug to approximately double the sales it has right now. And we have essentially one competitor, and we believe our drug has not only faster onset but better compliance capabilities than the other drugs. So that's a good factors in terms of assessing its overall market potential. Simbrinza, glaucoma. I'm not going to preach to anyone, but anyone over 55 should go see an ophthalmologist and get their ocular pressure tested. In Canada, you can see here we have about 400,000 or 500,000 Canadians that suffer from glaucoma, which is a pressure in the eye that ultimately affects the retina. Once it affects the retina, it's irreversible. So this is one of the top glaucoma treatments in Canada, both from a revenue perspective across all drugs, and we think we can continue to grow this with commercial support. So we've developed 3 commercial units. So these are standalone units with their own business unit heads, with their own sales team in ophthalmology, in respiratory, and in the hospital. They're different sizes based on the size of the physician population, but we really believe in building up core knowledge in our therapeutic areas. What you will see, I believe, is you will see additional products being added to this. Ophthalmology very much lends itself to a portfolio approach, and we feel that we can add products which will provide a greater range of solution to ophthalmologists in Canada, which is about 1,200. There's the revenues. Lastly, the hospital specialty unit. Redesca will be the biggest one. It's about 12 million in revenue right now. We launched it a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. This is the big year for it as certain market conditions have changed. We think we can get it to about 25 million. It's already one of the leading drugs in its category. So we continue to see some growth there, especially I'd say over the next 12 to 18 months. So now let's flip through. For those who have access to these slides, you can go through some of the ones I'm skipping through and certainly ask questions of it at a later point in time. So we want to talk about our financial results. What you see here on the purple bars, you see quarterly revenue growth. So we've been growing significantly for the last 4 quarters on a consecutive quarterly growth. Last quarter being 12.7 million. That's October 22. First quarter just ended in January. We'll be reporting those numbers next week. We have publicly stated that those numbers will be better than Q4, so we will see that sequential growth continue. Green bar is our gross margins. Again, you can see them increasing, and you'll see the same thing in Q1. And the yellow bar is our adjusted EBITDA loss. And again, you can see that decreasing, and it will continue to decrease in Q1. So revenues are growing, margins are growing, and our loss is reducing. We believe we'll be EBITDA positive by the 4th quarter of this year, and we'll be cash flow net income positive in the first half of next year. Again, this is a slide that's a bit repetitious of an earlier one, but showing where the revenues will come from. The green bar is the respiratory bar. So you can see that while it is small in 22 and will still not be in the largest area in 23, by 24 it will have overtaken. And that's the typical run rate, or as typical as you can have, I suppose, of a drug being launched from scratch, where it does take time to get physicians to start writing prescriptions, and then to increase the number of prescription being written. There's part of our management team there and the board of directors. So again, one thing I will say, and we'll see it on this next slide. Inside ownership, very strong, well over 50% of the company, and we've raised a lot of money. So the insiders have continued to put money in the company. We feel that aligns us with our shareholders. We have about 84 million shares outstanding. Our market cap is about 45 million Canadian, which we think is relatively attractive compared to our peers. What you see there is the analyst coverage, Industrial Alliance, Chelsea Stellick. what's interesting to know, and you have Scott at Paradigm and Andre at Mackey Research. These are three Canadian investment boutiques. But last night, relatively late last night, Echelon, which is another Canadian firm, has issued also a research report with a buy rating. So now we have four Canadian investment houses that have research coverage on us, and I think a lot of it is based on this fast growth revenue that they perceive and we project is going to continue for years to come. So we've hit the radar of a number of companies. So again, the investment thesis, as my colleague Fred likes to call it, is really top line growth, 12 a diversified commercialized portfolio with 6 really strong intellectually property protected assets that have different growth perspectives, but all are in the growth mode and bring benefits to patients. The portfolio itself has peak sales potential in excess of a couple hundred million Canadian. So it certainly allows us to go from this year's 50, 60 million of revenue to well over 100, 150, 200 million of revenue just with our existing portfolio. And that doesn't mean in any way that we're stopping or reducing our growth aspirations in terms of adding new products. So with that, that's the end of our. I appreciate a very quick run through Valeo. I think hopefully I've been able to impart the fact that we were a very motivated team, a lot of skin in the game, so to speak, in terms of equity. We're delivering on what we say, or we're delivering, as much as we can on what we say. So if you've heard us a year ago and what we said, we're probably ahead of where we were. And certainly this year, I'd like to, if I talk to you again in the next 6 months or so, I'd like you to walk away with the feeling that we're even further ahead than from what I've said today. So with that, I'll start looking. I'll go to the questions. So one of the questions here is, when you add a prescription drug to your portfolio, do you have to navigate any Canadian government review before you can introduce to the Canadian market? Absolutely. Health Canada works very independently from the FDA. There's no, approval by one means approval by the others. I think in time that might come about, but for now, all of the sovereign countries want to have their sovereign view on approving drugs. So we have those capabilities in house, and all of the drugs that I've talked about here have Health Canada approval to be sold in Canada. Are your licenses exclusive for Canada, and why do drug companies choose Valeo as a partner? Yes, the licenses are exclusive to Canada, typically 8 to 10 years with renewal periods. Why would a drug company choose Valeo? I think in that mid tier. I mean, in Canada you have the multinationals, so you'll think of Novartis, you'll think of Schering, Merck, you'll think of Pfizer. Below that mid tier, you have some other international companies, a little smaller. We're starting to get into that range. So we're 125 people, 50 plus million of current revenue. We're not a small player anymore in Canada. So we have the capabilities. So when someone wants to license a drug, when someone being another pharma company that has no intention of coming to Canada, they look for capabilities. They look for your ability to execute. And our teams now are strong enough that we have quite a compelling argument for people that want to have their drugs launched in Canada. The main driver, what are the drivers behind the huge revenue growth from Q4 to Q1? Organic growth, Redesca, our blood thinner growing, the growth of our asthma therapy. So you can, Q21 was a year of 13 million of revenue. So we had a lot of organic growth. Also in the fourth quarter, we did buy ophthalmology, which added about $4 million of revenue. So it was organic growth and that late acquisition at the end of Q3. So currently the numbers that we're projecting right now do not include it only include organic growth for this year. But certainly I'm working on a number of opportunities that I hope will allow us to surpass those numbers by adding on additional products. So our profit, what are your estimated profit margins as you approach 100 million in revenue? We should have EBITDA of about 20 to 25%. Our margins should start to be in the 45 to sort of 45, 50% ish range. I think those are good targets to have. So you could expect to see uh, EBITDA of 20-25 million when we're at 100 million. There's a lot of leverage once you get to break even. Our break even number is roughly about 80 million, and we'll be exiting 23 at about $80 million of annualized run rate. And one more question here: what are your key milestones for 2023, and what is the biggest challenge to your projected growth? Um, Let me start with the second question. The biggest challenge to our projected growth is execution. It's really ensuring that the team is executing and is out there every day, that our messaging is consistent to physicians, that our marketing strategies are online, and I believe they are so. I would say so it's not about the efficacy of the drugs, or is the supply chain strong? Are we missing the drugs in the sense of not being able being on back order? That's not our challenge. So our challenge is making sure that our sales representatives, the 85 people that go out there every day and interact with physicians, have the right messaging, and that we just execute. Key milestones for this year. In Canada, public reimbursement, in other words, the government paying for drugs, which is over 50% of all drugs sold in Canada, generally speaking, we have that for all our drugs. So that's no longer a key milestone for us. I think one of the key milestones for us is controlling costs. We have a very leverageable structure. When I say leverageable, what I mean by leverage is we can add products that will increase revenue, increase margins, and not increase costs. We have that ability, specifically in the ophthalmic area, where we have room for additional products. So I think maybe a milestone to look at is continued EBITDA loss reduction until we get to positive EBITDA in the fourth quarter. The other milestone would be adding to our ophthalmic portfolio. That's one of the real key parts of our business development strategy. We have see one of our another question. Will what is growth? What does growth look like beyond the 23? When you look at give you an example, our asthma drugs this year will probably generate about $11-12 million of revenue. We expect that to grow to probably $25 million of revenue the next year, 25 to 30. We're peaking those at over 100. So we continue to see quarter over quarter growth with our existing portfolio well into the next 2 to 3 years. Hard to see further past that. I mean, there's a lot of factors that can come into play. We don't see new drugs in the sense of anything that's being developed that will come to market in the next 3 to 5 years that will impact on our drugs. Pricing in Canada, always under pressure like it is around the world, but we feel confident we'll be able to maintain our prices. Our prices are relatively conservative given other therapies. So we feel quite strong about our ability to continue this growth over the course of the next few years. One more question here on can we expect Valeo to add new products this fiscal year? Adding the negotiation of products is very much an art and a science, and it really is a question of how long do things take. So there's a number of factors. One, is there something that breaks down in the discussions? Is there deal terms that cannot be overcome? The other is the speed and that the various parties can work at. We are generally a very efficient company, but when you're dealing with larger multinationals or other publicly traded companies, we understand that they have other objectives and other activities, and sometimes it takes a bit longer. But if I had to say, I mean, we've added products consistently over the last 3 years. I think we'll be adding some products this year, and again, it's to leverage, by and large, with our hospital but predominantly our ophthalmic. So most of our activities are around ophthalmology. And for those who know or have been involved in any way with ophthalmology, this portfolio approach. In other words, in glaucoma, there's first line treatment, there's second line treatment. So Simbrinza is typically a second line treatment. We'd love to find a first line treatment. So you're going into a physician with the same sales rep with a more compelling proposition of saying you can use our products throughout the entire treatment protocol with your patient. So these are the types of things we want to leverage, and which we expect will come to fruition this year. And again, those would be supplemental to what we've talked about today in terms of any revenue or profit growth. With that, I see we're coming up on our 30-minute timeline. I really appreciate the questions that we received from our audience, and you have the contact information here. Certainly. Don't hesitate to contact us if you have further questions or want to know about us, or get on our mailing list. Q1 results are out next Wednesday night. Next Thursday, there'll be an analyst call, but you're more than welcome to join that analyst call, where I'll go through, and our CFO, Luc Mayville, will go through our results. And again, we just look forward to you continuing to follow Valeo and its journey in Canada to being one of the premier mid-tier pharma companies.